All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Peanuts from the Plebs,
Hola.
number 14th.
Hello.
All right, the floor is open.
Well, we could definitely start with, I have something that I can talk about that'll actually make us happy, right? For the first time in
Okay.
All
a
right.
little bit, right? Some semi good news. All right. And I think you'll like this one, Steve, because I actually thought about you when this story came out. So this came out on the 10th, and it's from Common Dreams. As you can see, it says what a healthy democracy should look like. Connecticut's small donor or small dollar campaign program, a model for restoring power to the people. New report details how state initiative leveled the playing field for candidates and ultimately led to better legislative outcomes for communities. So it says a Connecticut statewide small dollar donor program has resulted in more competitive races, allowed new voices to get elected, and led to better government policies, according to a report released Thursday by advocacy group Common Cause. And apparently, they're the ones who are really leading the charge behind this. Have you heard of this group, Steve?
Common Cause?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. They've been around forever.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so they are leading the initiative on this program called Citizens Election Program. And so it says the Citizens Election Program, enacted in 2008, is a voluntary program in which candidates for statewide and state legislative offices must agree to fundraising and spending restrictions and demonstrate public support by raising between $5,000 and $250,000, depending on the office sought, from small dollar donors. Those contributions can be between $5 and $100 each. Once those conditions are met, candidates receive grant money for the program, which is funded primarily from the sale of abandoned properties in the state's custody. And so then it talks about essentially the things that have come out of this, right? So it says candidates participate. From 2008 to 2018, an average of 75% of all state legislative candidates joined the CEP. In 2018, a record 85% of General Assembly candidates joined. Small dollar donors dominate. In 2018, 99% of campaign funds used by state legislative candidates came from individuals, and the majority of those were from within a candidate's district, which I think that's also really important, because we see that a lot of these races, it's highly influential, like lots of money flows into them, and a lot of that money isn't even from the state in which these representatives are trying to win. Races are more competitive. Following implementation of the CEP, Connecticut rose to the 8th most competitive state and has continued to rank in the top 3. In 2018, the state was ranked first in the nation for monetary competitiveness. That's a pretty cool stat to have behind you. Mm-hmm. New voices get elected. The percentage of women elected in the state legislature increased by 33%, which that I'm not, that doesn't really do anything for me, because that's just identity politics, and I really, I don't really appreciate that, but whatever. Better government policy. So following elections in which candidates ran under the program, Connecticut's legislature passed the nation's first paid sick leave policy for service workers, the nation's first genetically modified organisms labeling bill, and voted to return nearly $24 million annually in unclaimed bottle deposits back to the public, a measure lawmakers failed to pass previously due to pressure from industry lobbyists. So again, I think that's why it's really important. And, they're setting the trend for this, because it says in November, voters in Oregon and Alaska will decide on campaign finance reforms proposed through citizen ballot initiatives. Oregon's measure, if passed, would limit campaign contributions and expenditures, require disclosure of contributions and expenditures, and require the political advertisements identify the people or entities that paid for them. In Alaska, which I thought that was the rule to begin with, but I guess maybe not in Oregon. In Alaska, campaign finance reform is integrated into a ranked choice voting initiative. It would require disclosure of political contributions of $2,000 or more, replace partisan primaries with an open top 4 system, and enact ranked choice voting.
Yeah, ranked choice voting is on the ballot in North Dakota, Alaska, and Massachusetts coming up. Moving for People's Party was pushing that fact, getting that out there. It's great stuff. our friend John, right, that's now in Scandinavia or something like that,
Yeah, it's
John
in
Stewart.
Finland.
in Finland, worked on the
Yeah.
ranked choice voting in Massachusetts. So shout out to John.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting, especially in the context of what just happened in Rhode Island. I'm sure you're familiar with that, right? With the basically a progressive wave in Rhode Island was successful in getting rid of a lot of long time corrupt, conservative Democrats in the state house. So that was it was interesting. I don't, I think there's definitely a movement of disgust and populism to throw the bums out basically at the state level, which is really good because it's not just about the top, right? It's
Right.
Yeah.
about what's going on the bottom. Now with this particular initiative, I'm not sure what I think about that. First, because like to say like 80, what the statistic was, 85% of the um, candidates are participating in this program, and then to imply there's a causative relationship between them participating in this program and more women getting elected and certain progressive things happening. It's a correlation. I'm not sure it's a causative
Right.
effect, and I'm not sure. Connecticut, having lived there for a long time, I know it's one of the most corrupt states in terms of the state legislature, and I'd be, just like a bottle, a deposit reform bill. Well, that's great, but like we're talking about like major. We want major change at the top, and or it's just really talking about that kind of major change. Just playing devil's advocate here. It's anything like this is a positive thing. I just don't know how much it is really a model for the rest of the country, as opposed to like I think we need to look at every state, what's going on, like in Rhode Island, what's going on in Connecticut, what's going on in Massachusetts with congressional races, and kind of like figure out what's working, what's not working.
Yeah, but it's definitely, I mean, it's a positive. I mean, the more you normalize good legislation, the more, people have those expectations in neighboring states and so forth. So, it's good news. I mean, it would be really nice if the largest state, California, actually took advantage of having Dem supermajorities and actually did something
Right.
of a progressive nature.
Right.
It would be great if something like this happened in California and we start seeing some reforms that are really needed.
I mean, a lot of it, ranked choice voting is a big one. And in California, they have the, law where the top two vote getters in the primaries are the ones who are on the ticket.
Yeah,
so,
they have a jungle primary, right?
well, I don't know what the term is, but I mean, in Nancy Pelosi's district, Shahi Buttar is going to be in the general election on the ticket. So that's normally in most states, if you didn't win a plurality or majority in the primary, you're not top vote getter. You're not going to appear on the ballot in November. Whereas in California, you do even if you're on the same party, if you're the second top vote getter. So there's I mean, a lot of states do different things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what other states do that in particular, and maybe you wouldn't really need that if you had ranked choice voting, but I thought that's interesting that California has that. I had never heard of that before.
Yeah, I just think that this, this type of initiative, especially because it seems like this is something that's people powered, right? It's something that it comes from the direction of what the people in the community are looking for, and the fact that, I mean, whether there's a direct link between these, how things have changed, even if it's slightly, even if it's like the small initiatives. I just feel like that's where it needs to start, and we need to see these positive little granules planted so that so that other people can be motivated, right? Because like what Jim was saying, that this is Connecticut that's doing this, and just like how in Maine, that's where ranked choice voting first happened, and it set the precedent for other states to do it, and that's why now other states are doing that, right? And so that's why I was saying that I think that this is a good first step. It's not
right, and I think it's really good that
it never goes far enough and all this, but ultimately I think that this is it really is highlighting the fact that people know that the main reason for this corruption, or one of the main reasons for this corruption, is money in politics. And I feel like that conversation of getting money out of politics has kind of gone by the wayside, especially because it's always this like partisan bullshit that's going on. When ultimately, like George Carlin said, it's one big party, right?
Right.
And you ain't in it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. And you ain't in it.
Exactly, and you ain't in it. We ain't in it.
Yeah, the only time any campaign finance reform laws are used are as a political weapon.
Right.
See, because they're so selective in their use, it's always BS when they do it.
Another interesting thing, though, is to show the influence of money in politics, and obviously it's vast. But on the other hand, money is not a guarantee that you're going to win an election, because you look at right. Kennedy running against Markey in Massachusetts, had spent more money, had a lot of money behind him, and was not able to get the votes. And in 2016, of course, Trump spent a fraction of what the Hillary campaign spent, and still managed to win enough electoral votes to win the presidency. So it's not just a matter of money is not a guarantee
right.
of winning votes. Doesn't matter how much advertising you buy. If you're not a viable candidate, you aren't going to necessarily get elected.
Yeah, 100%. Sorry, I do agree with that. But at the same time, we also have to take into account that a lot of people don't run for Congress or for any sort of state legislature or anything because of how much money that it takes to be able to even be a viable candidate.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah. Plus,
no,
like the fact that
Absolutely.
you have a shit to do. You have a job, you have family.
Exactly.
Like who's gonna you basically it's a full time. If you're gonna do a good job, it's a full time thing. And what do you actually get paid as a legislator in a state office? Sometimes it's paltry. What you actually get. So unless you have family that's supporting you, it's pretty hard to make a go of it. Or you're on the take, right?
Or you're somebody who is like, it's financially well off, like
right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's what keeps happening.
So it becomes something where it's only the elite or the people who have money that are in control of everything, and then the poor folk, or just the regular people, they don't have a voice because they can't ever run for anything.
Right.
Sure, which mirrors our justice system, right? I mean, it's all about, if you got the money for the lawyer, your percentage chances are just so much higher. Yeah.
Which again is why I'm in favor of higher pay. Which is not a popular thing, but I think higher pay for people who are serving in office and of course strictly prohibit contributions and other ways that they currently survive through lobbyists or whatever. But when you pay them $12,000 a year, they can't survive on that. They need to get a decent pay, and that needs to be their pay. That no other sources, but that's their pay, and they need and from the congressional level, national level down, I think you need to have better pay. But I know that's not a popular position, because people are saying like, well, politicians are we're paying too much already. We shouldn't be paying more money for that. But we're actually paying a lot more because of the corruption than we would be under more equitable system of pay. But that's just my opinion.
Yep, and you can also talk about limits on their ability to jump right into lobbying and all that, right? As say if you were to have a bill where you were to increase pay, I would make that part of it as well, right?
Well, the revolving door. I mean, where the policy decisions are made with an interest in landing a lucrative position after you get out of office. I mean, somebody who's in the SEC, for instance, it's an appointed position. It's not even an elected position. Like you're in that in a position in the executive branch, and you make policy based on what's going to benefit your corporate cronies, and then of course you walk into this plush position after you leave off, after you finish your term.
Right.
In government, that's obviously that's an issue. It's not just elected. It's also all these appointed people.
Yeah. And after you've had your turn, getting insider information that you can use to trade on, to short sell certain stocks during a pandemic to make yourself some money.
So.
Yeah, maybe one giant bill that can fix all these things. Say, okay, we're going to give you plenty of money to live on, so you can afford to live in DC and afford to come and go. But we're cutting off all this other stuff that currently is just leading to the corruption, right? The abuse of office.
I think along the lines of what Daisy is talking about here, I think it would be interesting to kind of, I mean, maybe somebody's already done this, to have kind of like a little database or a spreadsheet of different states and what what because Connecticut has this example of this policy, and then Rhode Island has this progressive. I forget I think it's Rhode Island Progressives or something like that organization that was very successful and very organized. And what are other states doing? And kind of looking at what works, what doesn't work, because why reinvent the wheel every time? Like I like to see stuff happen in Massachusetts, but maybe we should look at what's going on in Rhode Island or Connecticut or other states and see what could we apply here, or are people already applying that? And could we get together and work on that? So that would be something that maybe a future show we could talk about. What other states are doing. I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, definitely.
True.
So I was going to talk about Movement for a People's Party because I was surprised because when I first heard about it, I thought, okay, these are a bunch of disenchanted, disillusioned Bernie supporters who were just frustrated, and they were forming this new party, and it didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting anywhere. And then actually, then they got a lot of coverage, and they had their convention, they had Marianne Williamson, and you had a lot of big names, Cornel West, who were addressing this. So obviously, it's getting Nina Turner, Jimmy Dore, right? All these people.
Chris Hedges.
A lot of names.
He hit the ball at the ballpark. He was number one. I'm sorry, no one else. That convention, it was Chris Hedges. It should have just been Chris Hedges. I mean, I really enjoyed. I thought it was really great. Such a contrast to the. I didn't really watch the
such
other
a contrast to the others. Yeah.
But yeah, Chris Hedges. I'm sorry. I just need to say Chris Hedges was.
Okay.
He was great.
So I was looking at their platform, and it's basically like it says. It emerged from Bernie Sanders' first presidential campaign platform, i.e. 2016, and it was voted on by members in March of 2018. And then it says the final platform will be passed at their founding convention in 2021. So obviously, the Movement for a People's Party has every intention of becoming a people's party. And playing the devil's advocate, as I always do, I don't see the party actually, I think it's based on a faulty premise, which is somehow that they are going to form a third party. They're going to get a lot of support. They're going to get petitions to run candidates on the ballot. They're going to get elected, and then they're going to push through this platform of abolishing corruption and changing the tax code and all this stuff. And I don't see it happening because there's so many impediments to that progress, to that process. Just trying to get candidates on the ballot as third party. I mean, the Green Party traditionally it's been difficult for years and years, and this new party, one of many, is going to be trying to get candidates on the ballot. And the idea is somehow we're going to get 51% of the vote at least, and we're going to win these seats. I don't see it happening, and maybe they'll surprise me, but I don't see it happening. And I also see the platform is kind of a wish list of everything on the left. And I agree with most of it, but they aren't really as far as I can tell, they don't really explicitly address the Julian Assange, Snowden issues there. It seems to me it's kind of like we're going to get elected and we're going to push through this platform. And I just think we need a much more kind of a movement, aggressive system of people really pushing back against the oligarchy. I don't see it happening at the ballot box. I mean, I see it's important to push for this kind of stuff, and I see it's important to push for candidates getting elected. But I wouldn't close the door on Cori Bush in St. Louis just because she's a Democrat. Whereas the Movement for People's Party seems to say that we can't work. The Democratic Party is corrupt. We can't work within them at all. And I feel like you have to work with whatever. You need to form alliances wherever you can. Even if even if you don't agree with somebody 100%, if you agree with them, 80%, you should form an alliance with them, because the right is certainly doing that. And if the left is fractionalized and we're all separate trying to form our own parties, we're never going to get anywhere. So starting with that, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the People's Party. This is from the website here, and it has this is their platform right here.
No. See, I want to push back on that, though. I don't think that is, quote unquote, their platform, right? So the last action they've actually taken was at the end of the convention. I've got the vote right here.
Okay.
Basically, they pushed out the question, do we commit to forming a major new political party free of corporate money and influence in 2021? So they're still in formation. This platform is not like a signed off platform for the new party. This is still a projected possible list of items that could find their way into the platform for the Movement for a People's Party. It's not the final platform. So that's one thing. Yeah.
Okay.
It's still yeah, and you're right. The formation was absolutely with a draft Bernie intention, I believe, and it was basically formed from the ashes of 2016 Bernie, but it is evolving away from that. And I think we still remains to be seen what it becomes, but yeah, it's going to be largely consist of Bernie type things. And maybe you're alluding to the same thing, where Bernie was not as active in addressing things we would have liked him to have, such as Assange and so forth. There sometimes seems to be a reticence on the part of the Movement for a People's Party as well.
I mean, to me, it's not angry enough. Like Trump got elected on anger. People were like angry at the swamp, and people were angry at the NAFTA or whatever. And Trump was able to co-opt that sentiment and use it to get elected. And I think
right.
To me, it's just not enough anger. Like, it's like, okay, we're gonna get out there and have meetings and get petitions signed and get candidates and get them elected and push this through. It's like, I don't know what planet you're on, but like, it's not going to happen here, in time for all the stuff that's going on with economy, with climate, with nuclear weapons, with everything. It's like, to me, it seems like there's a lot of good stuff here, but it's missing the element of like, we need people people need to be pissed off, and people need to say, we want this now. And they say, with the tax thing, they say, well, under Roosevelt and in the early 50s, the tax rate was above 90%, the top marginal tax rate. It said, well, we're not going to go that high. It's like, why the fuck not? These people should pay, there's no reason that a trillionaire should not be paying 90%, above whatever it is, above $50 million, they should be paying 90% of that in taxes. I don't understand why they're so timid about it. So
well,
I would like to see more.
I don't know. Maybe because other parties are so bad that they think that a lot of folks would go for them, even if they didn't push to the extreme or something. But I know what you're saying. It's not really, in our viewpoint, that really wouldn't be extreme. There's no reason for anyone to have $1 trillion, right?
Right. I mean, it's just, I don't know. That's my feeling.
Well, I think it comes down to almost like an image problem, right? It's funny. I actually used to work at Nordstrom, right? And I always used to say that Nordstrom always had an image problem, because they wanted to come off as this brand that, or this store that any person can come into. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to be you don't have to go to Saks Fifth Avenue, that's where the rich people go. But Nordstrom, your regular Joe Schmo can go in there and you can also shop. But the problem was that the prices never reflected that, And so that's why I always used to say, it's like, you have an image problem. You need to decide what you want to be. And for the Movement for a People's Party, I feel almost like they're going to be labeled extremists, no matter what. If you're going to be labeled that, run with it, go with it,
Yeah.
And what I'm picking up from what you're saying, Steve, is that you want an actual leftist opposition party that is unapologetic about being leftist and wanting to bring about these changes.
I want a movement more than a party. So if the movement consists of People's Party and Democrats and socialists and some fringe Republicans working together, more power to it. I mean, as far as, I don't know if it's, I don't think we should be fixated on the party as opposed to like just getting shit done, because like thinking we're going to do it through the ballot box or through the party system, that's just one little tool you have in your toolbox. And as far as I'm concerned, you need a whole movement.
Which I agree with, but so the only pushback that I would give to that is, like, for instance, so we've seen what's been going on for months now with all the protests, right? So that would be the opposite of what you're saying, right? That's not taking it to the ballot box. It's actually
Right.
getting out on the street and
Right.
doing stuff. But what has come about from that? And that's the only, I'm not
Right.
saying that you're not right in thinking what you're saying. What I'm saying is that also doesn't work.
Well,
It needs to be a combination. And
right.
that's what I think that Movement for a People's Party is trying to do, where they're
Right.
trying to merge those two parties.
Well, I think you have
In the
to.
sense of, it's the activist side, the people on the street, the doing stuff, but also the legislative side.
I would say that people on the street have accomplished something, and just creating an awareness. I mean, so many young people have been energized by that and have been, engaged where they weren't before. So they might go out and vote now because of that. Or so. I mean, it's had also, there's been a lot of negative, obviously negative reaction to it as well. But and I'm also thinking not just activism, like holding signs in the street or protesting, but actually lifestyle changes. So we're talking about like people starting to say, well, I'm gonna start using cryptocurrencies where I can, instead of the mainstream currency. Or I'm gonna rely more on barter or whatever. I'm gonna start using my economic power as a person to change the system. I'm gonna eat less meat. I'm gonna do whatever. And the party should be pushing some of those things. Like, here are some guidelines. This is how much wealth a person should be living. Within. They should be above a certain level in wealth. They should have these certain basic needs fulfilled, such as healthcare, housing, meaningful work, etc. But at the top, there has to be a cutoff point where saying, if you're above $50 million or $100 million in wealth, like, you don't need that money. Like, it should be, if you want to go for it, more power to you, but it should be taxed at a very high rate, and that should be part of the platform. It seems to me it has to be focused on people's um, uh, uh, individual lives. Because it's when everybody starts changing the way they live, that's when things really change. It's not just a matter of going and voting. That's not what democracy is. Not just voting. It's like changing your lifestyle, your carbon footprint, all these things. And I know, Daisy, you live that. I mean, you drive your electric vehicle, and but everybody's got to do it at their own pace, at their own within their own means. But like, they can make decisions, and even people who are so-called powerless people at the bottom, they can make decisions. Like, there's better ways to eat than going through and getting dollar meals at McDonald's at the drive-through. There are ways you can eat better and actually spend the same amount of money or less money. And we should be encouraging that kind of stuff, as well as trying to. I think it's a movement. So it's not just the activism on the streets. It's not just voting, but it's people changing the way they live. And I don't know, I don't want to be like Big Brother and tell people you have to live this way. But the idea is like, you know, it's a necessity to have change, to have people actually change the way they live, because they can't still go to Walmart and buy their 50-inch TV and expect that we're going to be super progressive, because it's all built on that system of exploitation and cheap labor and cheap materials, and that's going to have to change. What do you guys think of that?
So my quick take on that is, what you're saying is, it's good. The things that have been happening with protests and so forth are good for changing hearts and minds and getting more people thinking about these issues, right? But we're already there. We already have 70% of people want Medicare for all, right? But so at what point does the dam burst, and what does the dam burst really look like, right? If basically the Democrats can push down the demand in their party is like 85% or something for Medicare for all, they can push that down and elect Biden and absolutely commit to protecting the Affordable Care Act, i.e. protecting the profits of insurance companies. What does a dam burst looking like? Because the dam's gonna burst, and I thought maybe the protests in the street was the dam bursting, but I think we're still just generating more demand for the policies that you're talking about, Steve. But we're not there yet. I mean, the two parties, the duopoly still rules supreme, right?
Well, I don't know if they rule supreme, but they still, but there are cracks showing, and I think the dam could burst. But I mean, what it takes is like a Montgomery bus boycott level of civil disobedience and economic change on a local personal level to really start these movements. I'm thinking of Gandhi type movement in India, against the British, or where you actually you get the oligarchs where it hurts, right? So what do they you got to think about what they want. They want the system of low taxation, of basically free labor, and if you interrupt that system, that's where it hurts them. So how do we do that? That's the question.
And Biden saying that he wants to increase the military budget.
Yeah, I mean, Biden's just the problem is there's this specter of fascism now, right? With Trump, but I mean, the fact is that Biden's like fascism light, right? But it's Trump is really scary, and people are like, okay, we got to get rid of Trump. But it's not. That's just this was inevitable that we're going to head towards this fascist system, and it's not because of Trump. It's because of the system that's existed for decades before that.
So what I think is that Steve, you've been talking about for weeks now that you and Caitlin Johnson has also been talking about how we need a consciousness change, right? So that's
right.
what you've been talking about.
Exactly.
And I totally agree with that. I think that is what we need. I think that that's something that actually comes about from just your environment and the circumstances. And that's what's happening now, is that the circumstances are calling for people to change the way that they're looking at policing standards and all this kind of stuff, right? I just think that the Movement for People's Party, and I'm not endorsing them. I'm not I've already told you I'm going to vote Green for this election because I think that the Greens as a party, they actually hold the values and everything about the platform and everything is what I agree with. But I think that the Movement for People's Party is just the vehicle that people are using in order to spread that consciousness, just, you know what I'm saying, to kind of continue going forward, because we can't just think that, if things just keep going the way that they're going and we continue to just have, unfortunately for a lot of people, what they see as just the two parties in control, then it's just going to create even more apathy and even more people checking out, you know what I'm saying? And just not wanting to be involved at all. And that is very dangerous. We can't have that, because unless we're just gonna not have government at all, you know what I'm saying? And if that's the case, all right, then let's just go that way. But we can't have it where it's we're kind of half in, but not really,
I mean, if the People's Party can take off and they get candidates and they get them elected, I mean, I'm all for that. I just don't know if I'm going to spend the lion's share of my efforts on that, as opposed to if I had a Cory Bush type candidate here, would I be working for them even if they're running as a Democrat? Because we have this duopoly, but I see I see this kind of progressive left moving up. That the mainstream DNC doesn't like, but I think they should be supported as well. I don't think we should close the door on any of these efforts. These efforts have to coalesce somehow. And I don't think I don't believe in the silver bullet. And to me, sometimes the People's Party looks like a silver bullet. I think if we can just do this, everything will be fine. And I think it's one of the tools in the arsenal to in the toolbox to try to build what you're trying to build. So I'm not going to stop anybody from doing it, and I think and I might even volunteer with them. I don't know, but I mean, I want to see something that works. I want to see something come together, and to me, it just seems very idealistic.
Yeah, I think they have. I mean, the folks from the Bernie organization, Our Revolution, et cetera, that are behind this. And there's some Greens that are in there at the higher levels and everything. These are people with a lot of experience, and I think they are pushing for the ideals that we would support. And I think it's it could go either way as far as I could see. It could, it could break down into some kind of infighting like the Greens have experienced recently, or it could absolutely take off. I mean, they seem to be realistic at this point that they first need to get ground floor level candidates in there. Who knows? At some point, maybe you will see, some of the better candidates in the Dem Party jump over, and then it just might catch fire.
Right.
But no matter what, I think it's a really positive thing because they are talking about and pushing for policies that we want. They're all the most important things. I wish they'd talk a little more about Assange and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But the most important things from, Medicare for all and anti-war and things like that, they do have a really a real great voice that we need involved there.
I agree. I just think the party route is necessarily is an uphill. Like you're trying to ride a tricycle up Mount Everest. It's not going to happen. I think I think having a coalition of what the Justice Democrats do, but not for just the Democratic Party, have it be for the whole left, and have kind of like you ascribe to these principles, you agree to these principles, therefore you get the imprimatur, the
exactly
approval.
What I was saying. Remember?
Yeah, no, I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that like that's going to be more effective to say, okay, this candidate, they're running as a Democrat, but they're approved by the Movement for People's Party because they support blah 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 blah. Whatever.
That's great.
And keep it simple. Don't. If you have a silver bullet thing where you have 100 different things listed, well, they might disagree on 10 of them, and therefore they're not going to get approved. Have it like 3 things, like taxation, fairness in elections, whatever, get money out of politics. I don't know, whatever it is, or 5 things. Keep it simple, and say if you agree on those things, you may not agree with us 100%, but we're going to give you a stamp of approval, and then the voters will know, okay, they'll vote for this candidate because they like this candidate, whatever, and they say, oh, they're supported by this Movement for People's Party. I never heard of them. Well, maybe I'll look them up. I'll find out about them. Rather than trying to go through that vehicle, the Movement for People's Party, to achieve what you want to achieve. Work with existing. Use the Aikido technique of using your opponent's, aggression to achieve what you want. So if someone's running for something, you may not agree with 100%, but like if they're supporting certain principles, you can support them, and you get to where you want to go. By using their I don't know, I didn't express that very well, but the problem is that the left, we're too fractionalized.
Well, it's the basics of the coalition idea that Daisy had talked about various times, where what are your most important things moving for People's Party and peace? I mean, Medicare for all and peace, anti-war, etc. And then all the parties, the Greens and Libertarians, where they're anti-war, and Move for People's Party, and even the Dems that are anti-war, et cetera, have those, basically say we are aligned with this candidate where they're anti-war, et cetera, push those ideas. But I do want to say for the Move for People's Party, though, they're also activist, right? So they also get people involved in activism, like the case where they were going to representatives' houses to shame them for, not voting for, COVID help for citizens, et cetera. That's an important aspect to being, and I hope they stay that way. I hope they continuously have actions. Their hierarchy and their structure is such that they have folks that are in charge of actions, folks that are in charge of this and that. So I think that's going to be an ongoing part of their existence.
And again, I would like to see what's going on at a local level. I think maybe that we should pursue that at a future date and see, is there any, M.P.P, are they involved with local races at all?
My understanding is that is what their focus is going to be.
Good.
Local.
That's my understanding.
They're not they would like to run somebody in 2024 for president, but from my understanding, that is not their main focus. And also the other thing that I was going to say is that as far as like the People's Party goes, I don't know what their stance is on like working with other parties or whatever, but I do know that people like Nina have said that we do need to, you know, work with people that are also still in the Democratic Party. We need to have several strategies working for us all at once. So
Right,
the
I agree
people
with
that
that.
are spearheading or the figureheads of this movement, they have expressed that they want it to be sort of like a coalition, obviously with the emphasis and the focus on People's Party, but also they understand that, you know, they have to work with other people, which is why you had a lot of people that on the at the convention they were saying that, you know, that they're going to hold their nose and they're going to vote for Biden and all that, but you know that they understand that it's just because they need to get Orange Man out and blah, blah, you know what I'm saying, like,
Right.
but they understand that they need to work with the parties because unfortunately you have to, you know, they're the ones who they do have the majority in our legislature, you know, not
Mhm.
the people.
All right. Good conversation.
Yeah.
Do we have any other topics today?
Yeah, what else is
Jimbo,
going
you got
on?
something?
Um, yeah, nothing major. I mean, basically, when we're talking third parties, there's also, as I was talking about before our pre-video discussion, um, Twitter is cracking down on articles of unity, basically continuing to throttle their discussion and their, you know, really, you know, rights to have to build their party. Um, which just shows that, I mean, it's a good thing in that they, you know, the corporate oligarchs are definitely concerned that, you know, you know, they see the rioting in the streets and they see all these different movements going on, movements, People's Party, articles of unity, etc., and they're worried. But it also emphasizes, I'm glad that exposes Twitter for just being an out and out, um, you know, tool of the oligarchs. Um, but it basically just shows that one of the major battles we're fighting right now is the media. I mean, basically, the way the media is a complete tool for the oligarchs and putting out propaganda. And at this point, they don't even pretend that the stuff is real, right? I mean, they just put out stuff that's completely false, based on nothing, based on complete hearsay. And I think that's we have to find a way to tackle it. I mean, we're kind of surviving right now by YouTube channels and
Right.
Ropin and all kind of stuff. And people that know to find that are finding that. But there's just still so much disinformation out there that it's extremely difficult for democracy to thrive, given that amount of propaganda that's out there. I mean, like I say, we've had the discussion before. You know, people that are extremely, you know, bright will parrot back the most ridiculous Russiagate, etc., kind of propaganda. And I would love to know, well, what the answer ultimately is. I think again, it's going to be the people like rising up and just
Well,
demanding change.
in terms of social media, Jim, you'd mentioned some of the other, you know, alternatives like to Facebook and to other, you know, to
Right.
YouTube, like Rockfin, for instance. And
Yeah.
I think, you know, it's just like the Democratic Party. We're still going to use YouTube. We're still going to use Facebook, probably. You know, we're going to use Twitter, but we also have to use alternative means of communication because ultimately the oligarchs, for lack of a better word, control these major corporate
Oh
media.
yeah. I
Uh,
mean, folks are demonetized on YouTube all the time. They just, despite doing it, they still are still pushing it because they're getting funding in other ways. But yeah, the major platforms, even for alternative media, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, all throttle back discussion when it gets dangerous
I
to
mean,
them.
and
You
that's
know.
just like the first step, right? I just read
Yeah.
today, like they're doing massive arrests in Minsk. You know, there's uprising in Belarus against Lukashenko, and basically they've shut down cell phone service and internet access there. So like that, you know, censoring or cracking down YouTube or Twitter or Facebook, that's just like the first step. They have
Oh
ultimate
yeah.
control over that. So like that's why it's all the more important to have alternative. Um, uh, I think it's like building up a parallel economy, whether it's cryptocurrency or crypto media or
Right.
other barter system or
Yeah.
other parallel systems, so that and not that you're going to abandon the mainstream systems right away, but the idea is that when those systems start to become less and less reliable, you have alternatives to go to instead of just anarchy and have nothing. It seems like uh, the internet to me seems like it's something they probably regret that they the oligarchs regret that exists, because the internet has done more than anything else to kind of
Oh, I'm sure they regret it. Yeah.
encourage
Yeah.
a revolutionary thought.
Right.
And how do you um, but how do you ensure that you have that freedom? How do you ensure that you have that? If if Facebook and um, Twitter went down, how are we going to communicate with people in Russia or people in China who are actually interested in the same
Yeah.
things, and
Well,
keep
so
that?
there are alternatives. It's just it's the regular rules of monopoly apply, right? When they have a complete monopolist control.
Thanks, Bill
Um,
Clinton.
yeah, exactly. They go, they just know that they can do whatever they want, right? So I keep pushing people to the alternative to Twitter is Parler. No, it's not perfect, but both of them would be regulated if each of them had 50% of the market and knew that when they misbehaved, everyone can jump over to the other one. That's going to exert a lot of control, right? And for Facebook, there's Vero, which is, I mean, it's not great, but it's an option out there. And there's Rokfin and all these other there's many different options for YouTube. And I'd love to see people get like kind of split their time over multiple platforms to just to give Twitter and Facebook and YouTube the message that we don't need you.
But it's hard to do
Yeah.
that when they have a monopoly. It's like it's trying to break away from the dollar. I mean, it's pretty hard to go to cryptocurrency or whatever. Because Facebook already has such a monopoly on everything. It's hard to jump ship.
Yeah.
And you need something like a new platform that maybe has some little novelty to it, like TikTok took over like really fast, right? And then have something
Yeah.
that's just a little different and get people. And this is a in terms of a populist bottom up change, even a consciousness change. People say I don't have to use Facebook anymore. There's an alternative there, and
Yeah.
I'm going to use it even if it's like 20% of the market. I'm going to do this because it's alternate, and then all of a sudden it becomes 50% of the market.
Yeah, Parler allows like 1,000 characters, which just the amount that allows you to express yourself is actually, I find, quite different. And I would encourage folks to like kind of cross post. Basically, if you put something, whatever you do on Twitter or whatever like that, well, post them a couple of months on Parler just to get that platform going. Just try and contribute on there enough. Just like, as I say, just to if 10%, if Parler had 10% of what Twitter had, they would start to worry that if we wanted to, we could all just jump over onto there.
Right.
Definitely as a communication platform for within a group, it functions perfectly, right? If so, I would encourage that. I think that could basically help to break some of this monopolistic behavior and propaganda and throttling back of discussion.
Can I just say something? So,
Yeah.
all right. So 3 things that I want to say. Remind me that it's 3 things, okay? Okay. So one is that, going off of what you guys were just talking about, that that there are other alternatives to these main platforms that we use, which is a good thing, but at the same time, it's a bad thing because it like waters down the impact, right, that you can have.
Yes. Yep.
Because obviously your message, if everybody's on Facebook, you can get your message out, quicker, you just have more of an impact.
Sure.
Where technically, idealistically speaking, of course. But then if you have to go on like 7 different platforms, you know what I'm saying? And obviously you're going to have different audiences or whatever, you're just not going to have the same kind of reach. So in that sense, it kind of waters down. And I think that's on purpose. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
They make you go into all these different avenues so that like I said, your reach is a lot smaller.
So it's not necessarily true on Facebook, right? Because Facebook, you're essentially walled off by
Right, that's why I said theoretically speaking, or idealistically, that's how it should be.
friend network, et cetera, more than you are on Twitter. Yeah, but so I'll basically say, as a developer, I know that there's the possibility of creating like a meta site, a meta posting site, and I would encourage some developers out there to do that. There's absolutely no reason I can't essentially have one page that I go to that has all my media. I should be able to say cross post on all these platforms, or tick off a checkbox what I want to cross post to, and it should be able to do it.
Yeah.
So I will encourage developers out there for to go for that. You can spread out these various, and Twitter becomes like one little section of your whatever, but everyone that's got a Twitter feed can see that,
Right.
So
and essentially that is what like Facebook kind of did with oh my God, Instagram, right?
Okay,
like, when they were trying to buy up all these different, and I think they tried to buy up TikTok too. But that's why they've done this, is so that they can have a monopoly. But in that sense, it's like the evil form of what you're saying, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm looking for.
But that's what I was saying. Idealistically speaking, then yes, that would be the best answer would be that. But right now, in terms of what we're doing right now, unfortunately, it does kind of scatter out everything.
Yeah, but there might be cases where you're most, like, if I'm working with a team for like Moving for a People's Party or something like that, my activist friends or something like that, we can communicate on Parler perfectly fine. We're not, if our goal isn't really to convince the masses, we are simply using it as a platform for our communication. So folks can use it that way, like immediately. Right? Where the goal is I want to get my message out and I want to convince other people, then you could go back to Twitter. Doing that kind of an action would still maybe make Twitter worry a little bit that its days of being a complete monopoly might be numbered if they're not careful of the way they behave. I'm just throwing out an idea. I'm just thinking about it now, but yeah, I will challenge some developer friends to come up with that meta site cross-posting social network thing, which I think should absolutely be doable,
And it has to be open source.
And it should be open source, yeah.
Number one, because if it's not open source, then
under the license, the GUID license.
Sorry, Steve, did you want to say something? Because I wanted to say my two other things.
No, I was just going to be like, how secure is it? I'm just thinking, like, if you have like these kind of like spin-offs from Facebook, and you have these like groups or whatever, or from Twitter, that are just like a limited group, I think that's like a good idea to pursue. But like, how do you keep it secure? Is there any kind of policing you do on that? Like if all of a sudden you have trolls coming in and saying and like trying to infiltrate into it, like how do you control that? Do you have, because like Facebook or Twitter will have policing to keep certain political views out of there, right?
Okay.
But like, would a smaller group, it's just a thought I had, would they have any kind of like way to control infiltration by subversive who are trying to destroy
I'm not quite getting what you mean. You mean on
like if they hack, or
on a
just
different
like
on a different platform, or
no, on the same platform, if they're trying to get in there and take over, because I'm saying, if let's say one of these Parler all of a sudden became like 15% of Twitter, then all of a sudden like they're going to appear on the radar of like the powers that be, so they will make attempts to get accounts and infiltrate and control it and everything. So like I think you kind of have to be whatever works now, you pursue that, but then you have to be flexible because stuff can change, and then but anyway, that's neither here. I think what you're saying is a positive idea,
Yeah.
All right. So then the other thing that I wanted to say was that, talking about TikTok, right? What?
Okay. You had two more, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then was the thing about TikTok, where we've seen how, because it's controlled by the Chinese government, right? That you have Trump having, saying that the only way that we're not gonna, cancel or, completely ban TikTok from the United States is if Microsoft buys it, you know what I'm saying, or a US
Right.
company buys it, and then you have, because Microsoft couldn't do it by itself, it was like teaming up with Walmart to,
Yeah.
to buy TikTok. So that is a major issue as
Right.
well, where you
Yeah.
have, the government clearly stepping in,
Yeah.
and you cannot say this is a free market or anything like that. Is literally government control
Right.
Yeah.
of this company that's not even American,
And
right?
somebody told Trump, said, when he's talking about banning TikTok, is that you can't ban TikTok. If you ban TikTok, that generation, anybody who's going
Yeah,
to vote for
young
you is
people
not going to
won't vote
vote
for you.
they won't vote for you. So you better not
Oh,
do,
interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's a riot.
because like
Well, and the
my
only reason it
daughters are
didn't
on
go
that
through was because China, they came up with some new legislation, or some law that they wouldn't be able to sell. Like, you have to get the approval essentially of the Chinese government in order to sell your company. So yeah, and that's even bigger. That brings in geopolitics. You know what I'm saying? It has an even bigger impact, right? And then the other thing that I wanted to see if you guys knew about how now Facebook, again, another government mandated thing, where the week before the election, Facebook cannot have anything political on the site.
Wait, who mandated this? Where'd this come from?
It was like the committee that oh my god, I forget. It has to do with it's Congress. It's Congress has mandated for, because they've been having all these like I think recently, maybe last week or something, Mark Zuckerberg had to go to one of these congressional hearings or whatever, and
Right.
and yeah, essentially they have mandated that you cannot have
Like
anything political the week before the election on
Facebook
Facebook.
only, not also Twitter.
Yeah, that I know of, it's Facebook. I'm sure it's gonna go across the board.
Yeah. Well, what does that mean? Nothing political. So I can't say like
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Who was the arbiter of that?
Exactly.
Who was making that decision? Right.
And it's just because the whole thing of that you don't want, because the Russians, they're
Right.
gonna hack and they're gonna send memes out to people,
Yeah.
So I just got a thing from the post office, a form thing, a card about voting by mail. First of all, I never got my ballots for the primary. I had to go
Oh
vote at City
no.
Hall. I got to vote at City Hall.
So you didn't get a vote for Kennedy.
Well, I voted at City Hall, so
Okay.
I could vote for the Kennedy of my choice there.
Oh.
But I got this card from the post office saying we recommend mailing in your ballot a week before the election. So now, first of all, like that seems to me like you should have the right to vote right up until the election, because like things can change. Why should you have to vote a
Right.
week ahead? But they're actually encouraging you to vote a week ahead in order to make sure your vote is counted in a timely manner or whatever. I was a little bit upset by that, because I just thought, like, why are they telling me when to vote? I can vote
Right.
anytime up until
Yep.
election day. But
Yeah. That in itself is a political action, sending that card
and
out.
speaking, I
Sure.
just wanted it reminded me too, when you're talking about the political stuff on Facebook, that TikTok, is also political. That TikTok, there was a case of I think it was anti-Trump or something, but a case of some, the video was about, eyebrow makeup or something or whatever. It was like a cosmetic type video, but then at 5 seconds of the video, it becomes really political, and this woman goes on to a rant about Trump or whatever. But I thought just the idea of having a political video in TikTok that's kind of camouflaged as a
Oh yeah,
makeup video,
innocuous makeup thing,
makeup
and
video, right? I
and
thought
then
that
some.
was interesting, and that you know uh, indicates the potential that a medium like that has. Even that you don't think of it as political, it could become political very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
In a
Yeah.
way that powers that be might not expect, right away. So
Right.
you always have to be like one step ahead, right?
But that's the thing. It's like, if we're gonna allow these CEOs, the people that are not elected, people that they're not held to account by anyone, right? And especially because they're a corporation and they're an entity, they're a person, right? They have personhood. And anytime that you say like, oh, why are you, they're censoring me? If you complain about anything, it's their company, they're allowed to do whatever they want, blah blah blah. If you don't like it, well then go somewhere else, right? That's always the answer. But if slowly but surely everything is being controlled by the government or whatever, then, or by these entities that we cannot hold to account, well, then eventually we won't have any sort of alternative, right? And
Right.
and
That's why we have to use people power to, use alternative, change everyday economic decisions, whether it's, to use Facebook or what you buy at the grocery store. That's what makes a difference as much as voting. Right.
Mhm.
Actually, a discussion with friends yesterday about like, why don't we just all join the Amish and just like rolling back the clock to a reasonable level of technology that takes care of our medical needs, etc. But doesn't put us in these positions of
That's like,
being controlled by the.
do you ever hear
Sorry,
of,
but
do you ever
that's
hear,
the opposite direction of where life is going
Yeah, I
right
do
know.
you ever
now.
hear of Ivan Illich from the 60s? Like, he was out of, I can't remember, he's from Russia or something, but he's in California.
Yeah.
This guy, Ivan Illich, and he famously said, that the bicycle is the most advanced technology we should have, because everyone can understand how a bicycle works. And we shouldn't have cars because it's too complicated. Well, I mean, all that's fine and dandy, but AI is developing at such a pace right now. It's like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And like, people thinking like we're going to turn the clock back, it's not going to happen. I mean, we're losing control. AI is developing so fast that like,
I
it's
forget
pretty
if we.
scary.
Yeah, I forget if we had this discussion. I mean, there are all sorts of scientists that basically say there shouldn't be any AI development going on that's not isolated from the internet. Because if you
Right.
were to crack the right formula for self-learning algorithms, you literally could have, God essentially, and
Right.
and it would be able to, by accessing certain protocols through the internet, it could be controlling nuclear systems or whatever.
Right.
So there's a lot. Yeah, there are people that really understand the stuff that are really worried
Okay.
about
Well,
that, about
let's
what's
get
going
back to
on.
Daisy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh,
We got
Oh, no,
sidetracked
no,
there.
no. That's
Okay.
actually, it's funny because that actually leads to, if we're kind of done with this conversation, it kind of leads to the
Yeah.
next thing that I want to do, the legislative week in review.
All
Okay.
right.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So, as you can see here, it says this is a new bill that was introduced. And it says to establish a government-wide approach to improving digital identity and for other purposes.
Oh boy.
So see, it kind of ties into what we were talking about here.
Nice.
All right. So this was presented by Bill Foster. He's a Democrat out of Illinois. It was just introduced on the 10th, and then it was referred to the Committee on Oversight and Reform and the Science, Space, and Technology and Ways and Means.
Oh yeah. Can you go back up just to see the title
yeah.
again? The purpose of that, to establish a government-wide approach to improving digital identity, whatever that is. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
because they always have to add this and for other
Right.
purposes. It's every single bill
Other
they
duties
add
as
and
assigned,
for other
like a job
purposes.
description.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Okay. And so on here they don't actually have the legislation. I was able to find the legislation, but of course they try to hide all this stuff, right? And again, it's been referred. There's 3 co-sponsors. I don't really know anything about, but this is a Democrat from Rhode Island, so we'll see how that goes with their progressive movements right now. And so, okay, so then moving on, this is Bill Foster. I didn't know anything about him, but he did put out a press release on this, and that's actually where I found the legislation. And essentially, breaking it down, it says this legislation would work to modernize the country's lagging digital identity infrastructure with a 3-pronged approach. It would establish a task force to bring together key federal agencies with state and local government representatives to develop secure methods for government agencies to validate identity attributes to protect the privacy and security of individuals and support reliable, interoperable digital identity verification tools in the public and private sectors. It would direct the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, to create a new framework of standards to guide government agencies when providing digital identity verification services, placing emphasis on privacy and security. And then finally, the bill would establish a grant program within the Department of Homeland Security to allow states to upgrade the systems they use to use driver's licenses and other types of identity credentials, and to support the development of secure, interoperable state systems that enable digital identity verification in accordance with the framework developed by NIST. I don't know what you guys are collecting from this, but what I am getting from this is that essentially they're trying to make a massive network where they have everyone's information, and it's no longer that you can escape to a certain state if you want to not be identified, or you know what I'm saying? Like everyone is going to be on this.
Right. It's cloaked in the language of we're protecting people, right? But it's really, yeah.
Right.
And I thought it's interesting.
I do have the bill, but go ahead.
It's interesting that he said we're trying to catch up with the developed world as opposed to the rest of the developed world. So like I guess we're not part of the developed world anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously,
come
China,
on, right? Dude, it's such BS.
Yeah. And so the question is whether or not this simply implies, a database, a nationwide database, or does it also imply tools such as drones and facial recognition and, GPS access to everyone's phones, etc., that allows, it to be like really implemented, like they really know where you are at all times,
Right.
And all your genetic profile and all that stuff too, right?
Right.
So they can target certain groups based on that or whatever. Yeah, nice.
Yep. So again, it does say, and it does have the House bill here, but it is HR 8215. It says to establish a nationwide or a government-wide approach to improving digital identity and for other purposes. And it's going to be called the Improving Digital Identity Act of 2020. And so it says the lack of an easy, affordable, and reliable way. See, it's convenient for you. We're doing this for you.
I know
okay, it's not for us. It's for you. All right. Way for organizations, businesses, and government agencies, businesses, and government agencies to identify whether an individual is who they claim to be online, creates an attack vector that is widely exploited by adversaries in cyberspace, and precludes many high-value transactions from being available online.
I think it would take a 13-year-old kid probably 10 minutes to pretend they're. I mean, it just seems like it's already out of date. The 2020 law, it's going to be out of date by 2021.
Right.
If it passes.
Right. Well, but that's why I think that this is setting up that infrastructure for a continually growing system. Do you know what I'm saying? Where they're going to continue, they're just going to add on to this, it's not going to just be this, it'll continue on. And then they kind of like try to justify it for you, right? So it says more than 164 million consumer records containing personally identified, 164 million, that's not even half of the population of the United States, right? But personally identifiable information were breached in 2019, increasing the total number of data breaches by 17% from the previous year. And also, let's keep into account the fact that we of these companies, you have companies like Uber, right? Who they were hacked and they didn't let their drivers know that they're actually going through some like big lawsuit right now because they were hacked and all of their drivers' information was taken, right? And they didn't let anybody know about that. Or Experian, right? How you have all these identity thefts that are going on, but it's because of these outside government sources having our information, right? So then in 2019, losses resulting from identity fraud amounted to $16.9 billion.
I bet if you took like the past like 10 years, the vast majority of everyone in the United States has at one time had some account hacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when they hack like these big accounts like Target or something like that, it's like 100 million are compromised, but
Right.
the actual number of people who actually have money taken or whatever because of that is actually probably it's a very small percentage of that.
Oh yeah, but
So
you're all exposed.
you're
You
all
know.
exposed. I mean, but
Right.
everyone's been exposed. But the point is, they're trying to like create this scare, fear culture that we have to take care of this problem, and it's probably China or somebody like that is going after your data, right? So.
Yeah.
Or Russia or something.
Exactly. And really what it comes down to is that these companies, they don't invest enough in their security systems. And that's why they end up getting hacked and all this, right? Is because they don't want to invest in this enough. So what's going to happen is that we're going to have government come in and regulate all of these things, right? But I don't know. It just
Good
to
luck
me, it's
with
just
that.
another big brother. It's just
Right.
another big brother.
Oh yeah.
So it says trustworthy digital identity solutions can help underbanked. And remember, we talked about this when
I never heard of this
hung out.
term. I never heard of this term before. Underbanked and unbanked. Am I
It's
an
because
unbanked individual?
everybody needs to be online. Everybody needs to be in the system.
Is that like if you're a bankster, you're not unbanked, but if you're not a bankster, you're unbanked? I mean, what does that mean, unbanked? I never heard of that.
Unbanked is just you deal essentially with cash, right? And they want everything to
I
be on a
see.
digital ledger so that way they can track everything.
Oh,
all right.
that's
So
why
an
we don't like
unbanked
cyber
individual.
currency.
Sorry, what?
That's why we don't like cyber currency, right?
Well, that's why Bill Barr actually wanted to make encrypting certain information, like for digital currency, wanted to make that illegal, right?
A felony, right? I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay,
Right.
so unbanked individuals better access to digital finances through innovative delivery channels that promote financial inclusion. Because again, this is all for you. And they're saying that it says the inadequacy of current digital identity solutions degrade security and privacy. So blah blah blah, it gives all that crap. And then it talks about how in 2016, and this is why I'm saying this is just building. It's a building block to just continue going. The 2016 Bipartisan Commission on Enhancing National Cybersecurity called for the federal government to create an interagency task force directed to find secure, user-friendly, privacy-centric ways in which agencies can serve as one authoritative source to validate identity attributes in the broader identity market. And then this is what it's supposed to be establishing, right? So it says there is established in the executive office of the president a task force to be known as the Improving Digital Identity Task Force. The purpose of this task force is to establish a government-wide effort to develop secure methods for federal, state, and local agencies to validate identity attributes, to protect the privacy and security of individuals, and support reliable, interoperable digital identity verification in the public and private sectors. The director shall be appointed by the president. Awesome, right? Okay. The task force shall include the following individuals or designees of such individuals. So we're going to have the Secretary of Treasury, the Secretary of Homeland Security. We know we can't be without that. Secretary of State, Secretary of Education, Director of the Office of Management and Budget, the Commissioner of the Social Security Administration, the Director of the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is NIST, obviously, because they're doing the framework, the Administrator of General Services, and the heads of other federal agencies and offices who the president may designate or invite.
So you have all these people in these high positions, all sitting there going, how can I tap into this national registry of every person electronically?
Exactly.
That's pretty creepy when you just think of the overreach that always happens during any time of crisis or perceived crisis, right?
Right.
Any kind of COVID, 9/11, whatever like that, the overreach that happens, this is guaranteed to give us some abuses.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
especially because think about it, if there's only one way of verifying your identity, you are at the mercy of this agency
Right.
then, right?
Yeah.
Because what about if you do something bad? We've been talking about this whole social score and the pre-crimes and all this kind of stuff. What
Yeah.
about if you get flagged and suddenly you can't be identified on anything?
Right. Yeah. Or
Then
yeah.
you can't shop online. You can't do anything. That's the whole
Yeah.
purpose, is that
Yeah.
you won't be able to do anything without them saying that yes, you are this person and
Sure.
yes, you can do whatever.
Yeah.
That to me is very scary. I
Oh
I
yeah.
I can't. And then the last part that I wanted to talk about this was so no later than 18 months after the date of the enactment of this act, the Secretary of Homeland Security shall award grants to states to upgrade systems that provide driver's license and other types of identity credentials to support the development of highly secure, interoperable state systems that enable digital identity verification. So the Department of Homeland Security will be in charge of the money that goes out to these programs.
Yeah. Now, if you were to ask around, like I personally know someone that had to deal with like they kept getting for like years. They would get a notification that they were late on their bills and they were subject to fines because somebody else had the same Social Security number, or there was some kind of Social Security number mix up. And they would go to the Social Security Administration, try to get straightened away. They thought it was straightened away and it wasn't. And they had to go back for years. So imagine the identity theft and the problems that could be caused to people by this, even just not during due to like them wanting to, but just through incompetence.
Right.
It's horrific.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is this going to pass, do you think? I mean, does this have enough support?
I think that because again, this was back in 2016. They made a commission, or they assigned for them to come up with this task force. So that's why I really think that this is just the next step. You know what I'm saying? And so then it says, not later than 1 year after the date of the enactment of this act, the Comptroller General of the United States shall submit to the Committee of Ways and Means and Financial Services of the House of Representatives and the Committee on Finance of the Senate a report that includes the following: an analysis of legal and regulatory requirements with respect to the collection and retention of Social Security numbers by non-governmental organizations. So now your Social Security number or your Social Security benefits are going to
get my
get
Social
fucked up in
Security
this.
number. Oh my God.
A recommendation on the necessity and effectiveness of any legal and regulatory requirement analyzed pursuant to paragraph 1 and the use of form of identification other than a Social Security number. So
it's all going to, like, to vote, you're going to need ID or whatever. And it's like, in most countries, you have an internal passport. I think the US is one of the few countries that doesn't have that. Like, in Russia and Germany, you have an internal passport. So that's what people use. Not, they call it ID, like in Germany, they call it personal ID. And it's like a little card or whatever, and you carry it around with you. And it's like we use our driver's license here for ID. They use that there. But Americans have always been resistant to having any kind of national form of ID. So we end up using Social Security number, which is really not supposed to be meant for that. And I think there is an argument to be made to have some kind of standardized government ID, which is not the same as what we're talking about in this legislation. I mean, they're kind of tying it in with that, but they're talking here about, your digital identity, which is something that's going beyond just having an ID card or whatever. But the idea is, it looks like, once you have these standards for driver's licenses or for other non-driver's license state issued IDs, if there's a national federal standard for that, then it'll start saying you can use that ID for for whatever purposes you use an ID for, whether it's voting in certain states or writing a check or whatever, as opposed to like the kind of hodgepodge we have now, right?
I mean, I definitely, obviously, they're not going to just implement, or they're not going to present something to you that isn't to your benefit, right? It has to be to your benefit. That's how they sell it to you, right? Is that, oh, this is for you, this is for your convenience, it's for your safety, it's for your privacy, it's for your blah 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 blah. But I'm too much of a cynic. I don't think that our government acts altruistically at all. I think that there's always some sort of motive, a grander motive than what is presented to us.
Well, everything that has been, Patriot Act, et cetera, FISA courts, everything has been subject to abuse, the same abuse that folks were concerned about and were, oh, you're not a patriot. This is a special time. We need to implement this, right. So
never let a good crisis go to waste.
Right.
Rahm Emanuel.
Yeah.
So yeah, but like I said, I think that this is just, we're heading in the direction of that social credit score. And this is one aspect, in my opinion, this is one aspect of that. Once we're all on some sort of main, like, centralized little hub of information.
Oh yeah.
That's it. That's what they need, right?
Right.
In order to be able to start implementing all this other stuff.
Well, we're all going to join People's Party and throw the bums out and elect the People's Party president, and this will all stop, right?
Yeah. It's a silver bullet. You did say it's a silver bullet, right?
So there is, to me, there is like the larger question of, even if you had the most beneficent people in charge, the runaway train of technology is such that at some point there will be, a drone the size of a fly that can kill you with a prick,
I think we're already there.
Yeah, we're already there.
That probably exists. It probably does exist. So how do you ever put that back in the bottle or whatever like that?
Can't
right?
put that genie back in the bottle.
Unless you have like an authoritative government that takes over the world and decrees to everyone, a bicycle is the highest level of technology we will allow, or beneficent aliens coming to take us over. How do you see survival happening over 200 or 300 years?
Well, Mike Gravel talks about the aliens, but
yeah. Oh, really?
We'll do a separate thing.
Yeah.
Another show.
I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's crazy to think that there certainly are people, creatures, aliens out there, intelligent life out there somewhere, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing about technology is it's not just the government. It's technology tends to be pretty democratic. So that people who can develop the drones, the size of flies, it can be smaller groups can develop this as well. It's not the same as nuclear technology. It's harder to keep under wraps. So that's a scary thought. When all of a sudden there is attacks against leadership or whatever coming from below, I could see that happening.
Oh, you certainly
not espousing that. I'm just saying that could happen.
Folks have already weaponized, $10 drones available at your local hobby store.
Right.
This is,
right.
So yeah, someone's going to put together some thinking like that, right? Like,
I remember when President Clinton came to Connecticut. This was like 25 years ago, and I went to shake his hand and everything in Eastern Connecticut, and there's all the security there. They had sharpshooters on the roofs, and they had everyone had to go through it, like they had to do the wand and make sure you had no metal on you and everything like that. But I think like in an era of drones and mini drones and all this stuff, like how do you control all that stuff?
Right.
Well, at this point, you have, and I remember watching like a series on this, I think like last year or the year before that, where it's essentially like biohackers. So now, because of CRISPR, which I am I'm a chemist, and I don't agree with it. But
I'm
which I
sorry.
don't know if you guys know what CRISPR
No,
is.
I don't know what it
No.
is.
So
I don't know what it
CRISPR is a gene editing tool that was
Okay.
created, and that's the future of medicine. Essentially, that's what
Okay.
they're doing. Is that they're essentially it's like they introduce a certain DNA that what this CRISPR does is that like it looks for a specific gene sequence, right?
Right.
And it cuts it, and then this Cas9 protein, what it does is that it like inserts whatever it is that you're trying to, whatever DNA you're trying to insert into there. And so it's
wow.
supposed to be like a way of like treating, like genetic diseases. So there are a lot of like good implications of it, but then there's also like, for instance, in Florida, I think it was maybe like a week or two ago, they're introducing, I think it's like 75,000 mosquitoes that they have genetically modified.
Right.
Because they're, you know what I'm saying? Because they're trying to genetically, and this has been done, actually in, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was in Martha's Vineyard that they did this experiment where they're trying to get rid of the rats, right? And now they have this other sort of problem because that is it's a domino effect. When you change one thing, one aspect in our ecosystems or in your ecosystem, your system, it will be a domino effect that unfortunately, because we don't look far enough or we don't think far enough into the future, we're only looking at this narrow scope.
Didn't Australia do that with frogs in the late 1800s or something like that? Didn't they introduce
rabbits?
Rabbits. It was something. Yeah. There was some.
Or they introduced like coyotes or
that.
whatever to get the rabbits, and the coyotes took over. Or whatever.
Yeah.
Right, but now they're doing that, but with genetics.
Right.
They're messing with the genetics of things, and that's the problem, is that we don't know what the long-term effects of these things will be, and that's why I'm telling you that when it comes to this type of legislation, that's what worries me. Is that it starts off with this, very simple task that you're trying to achieve, but somehow it turns out, because people, you introduce people into the equation, and that's where, people's motivations come into play.
And I don't think this congressman from Illinois, I don't think he just woke up one morning and say, I'm gonna write this legislation about this and introduce it. I mean, somebody came to him and said, whether it's his lobbyists or somebody higher up said, you be the one who introduces this.
Right.
This is what you'll get in return.
Right. And because you're like innocuous, nobody really knows. Like no one's gonna suspect anything, most likely, if you introduce.
And you're in a safe district, and all those things.
Right. Exactly.
And I think Chicago is a very.
Is he Chicago?
They're
Chicago area.
Well, it's Illinois. And
but I mean, Illinois is a big state.
I know. But I obviously I just always think of Chicago when I think of Illinois. But in the sense that isn't Illinois or Chicago, that's it's becoming more of a technological hub, right?
Really?
I didn't. I
so.
know.
I mean, I may be confused, but I thought
probably Chicago, Milwaukee corridor maybe. I don't know. You don't hear about it as much as Silicon Valley or Route 128 in Boston. But
if I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to be like a new Silicon Valley. That's kind of.
I know there's like a new hub like in Ohio now because of cheap real estate that generation whatever Z people are buying up cheap property.
Yeah, it won't be cheap for too long. Not with the way that everybody is escaping all of the cities and stuff.
True. Exactly. So,
anyways,
if you Google technological doomsday scenarios, you come back with 3,300,000 options.
Scenarios, Jesus.
For our demise. I'll say real quickly, one of my favorite, really schlocky, stupid tech sci-fi movies is this thing called Iborgs, and the premise is that the government, they create these they're drones, but they're little they're like little tiny eyeball things with legs. And the idea is that a law is passed after some terrorist event or something like that, that every American has to allow these things in their door inside. And basically they go around, they just walk in the room. They'll be looking at you, observing and going like that. And the big dramatic point is that supposedly the promise is that these things can never be armed. But of course they are at one point, and then the government's using them to take out people and all this kind of stuff, and it's really fun, but actually very plausible scenario now.
Iborg as an EYE, right? Not like
EYE BORGS.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll have to
it's
check
a fun,
that out.
schlocky, silly movie.
Okay, sounds good.
But it's kind of terrifying in its own way too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry. And the what I was trying to say before was that the series that I had seen, it actually talks about you can actually get these kits to do this sort of like gene editing and stuff delivered to your home. Like there's these chemists that they come up with the kits and they send it to people's home, and you can do all sorts of experiments. You can do all this stuff. So that is, where they're trying to figure out if they should put regulations on it, because then it's the whole thing of like, well, then you're only letting certain organizations have total control of it. You know what I'm saying? But it's like the whole open source thing versus having it centralized.
Yeah.
But that's really scary to me.
Well, we don't think that China doesn't have whole villages dedicated to working on something with this.
Right.
Yeah.
Or North Korea or Pakistan or all of these
sure. Oh yeah.
And that's why they say that the next like 9/11 attack or whatever that we would have, it would be a biological one.
Yeah.
Because that's the world that we're living in now, where you can genetically modify anything in your own home, in your garage.
And we know for sure that COVID isn't a result of that.
I don't know. Are we conspiracy corner now? No.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, that's the thing with runaway technology. Almost every conspiracy is possible. Of these of the technological influence. It's just like all these amazing things, horrific things seem completely possible.
Mm-hmm.
And on that lovely note.
All right. Well, that's our show. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Bye everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching.
Bye bye.